I don't know if you've noticed lately, but the world has kind of become a scary, dark place, so I think that means it's time
to leave the mortal realm and escape to the fairy kingdom. It's the only thing I can think of. Luckily, I've been going to the Ren Fair for years, so I already have most of the getup. Now I just need to shrink to 2 inches tall, gain magical powers, and grow wings. Okay, so the first two I haven't quite figured out how to do yet, but I can definitely make myself a pair of wings and show you how to make them too in case you want to come along. Unlike the moles, mice, and squirrels that I usually make on this channel, fairies are real, so that means that it's really important that I make a wing template that's 100% accurate.
This is proving surprisingly difficult to find. I mean, yeah, I've never managed to get any good pictures of fairies, but apparently no one else on the whole internet has either, so I guess I'm gonna have to go off my memory here. And it just so happens that in my memory, fairy wings look mostly like the ones on these ceramic fairy sculptures that your mom likes. It's uncanny. We must have seen the same fairies. This one stole my wallet. Now that I've 100% accurately depicted real fairy wings, I draw their general shapes out onto a piece of poster board to see if they're gonna be big enough to carry me away from this cruel, cruel world. And I think they will. But oh my god, this was nearly impossible to film. Then I print the design out piece by piece in glorious 8.5 by 11 printer paper and tape it all together for one final mock-up. As I'm doing this, it's dawning on me that these wings are actually 8 individual wings put together and I'll have to make all of them by hand.
Well, I already taped 10 pieces of paper together, so it's too late to change that now.
But now that I have the design, the first step on the road to the fairy kingdom is wire. This is gonna be like the bones of the wings.
The exoskeleton of the wings? Okay, so I don't really understand fairy anatomy, but they're basically gonna give the wings structure and make them able to stand up on their own.
But like in an aesthetic way, because I'm gonna use the wire to create all these little wing veins that I've drawn out in my 100% accurate fairy wing design. First, I'm starting with this 14 gauge galvanized steel wire that I bend following along the top vein of this wing according to my template. This is basically the strongest wire that I could find that I was still able to bend with my tiny, frail, ring size 3.5 hands. I leave quite a bit of excess wire off the stem end of this wing, which will eventually be used for attaching these wings to my body, probably not by stabbing them directly into my back, but you never know with these clickbait craft videos. Then I snip off a piece of this smaller 18 gauge galvanized steel wire and use this aluminum foil tape to wrap the two wires together as tightly and smoothly as I can until I get to the point where this little wire branches off into its own little nub. It's all very free form in a stick to the template kind of a way. Then I set that little bundle of joy aside and shape the next vein down with another piece of the thicker wire, add a few little wire veins to branch off of that, and attach those all with tape. And then put it together with the first bundle and tape the two of them together at their stems. Then, you guessed it, I take a break to scratch the chin of the hairy little man squatting in my apartment. And I rub his belly a little too, just to show off. You'll never see this coming. I shape the next vein down with thick wire, add some little wires to hang off of that, and tape them together. Oh, I should mention that I'm standing on the shoulders of fairy giants as I make this. I took inspiration for this part of the process from a craft tuber who ascended to the fairy realm long before me, Aubrey Bauk. I taped the last bundle to the first two, and now that this thing is looking like an extreme eye-poking hazard, I trim all the edges down to match my design. Okay, it's still an extreme eye-poking hazard, but I'll probably fix that in the future.
But for now, I just have 7 more wings to wire wrap.
While I worked to prepare myself for my big ascension to the fairy realm, I was watching a 100% accurate Discovery Channel documentary about fairies, and it said that they often steal babies to eat them or switch them out with changelings, and it made me realize something really horrible about the fairy realm.
I don't think they have TV.
If I move there, how am I ever gonna find out what's going on Severance? This is gonna be a lot harder than I thought. But these wires are done now, and that was a lot of work, so I don't know, I'm just gonna keep on going. I guess I can live without TV. It is starting to hit me though. This is a lot of wire. Like, this is all gonna have to go on my back. Well, I guess no one said that becoming a fairy would be easy.
Weirdly, no one says much about it at all.
Anyway, these wires are looking very wiry, so to help that, let's paint them. Since they'll be coming out of my back, I think the veins should maybe kind of match my skin tone. They don't sell any spray paint colors called Back Knee Blast, so this color will just have to do. This step brings out all the imperfections in the wire wrapping job I did, but I'm just trying to remember that when I'm shrunk down to 2 inches tall, those imperfections will be microscopic, and until then, these wings are going to be huge. If they look good from 3 feet away, it's probably fine. Once the paint was all dry, I decided that they needed to be a little bit less fleshy and a little bit more magical, so I hit the ends with some mossy green and tried to get a smooth-ish blend into the tan. I really feel like this adds a lot of dimension to the wires, and I'm kind of starting to see the wings in here. So that means we can move on to the very important step of adding the actual wing part to these wings. I'm starting by rolling out a sheet of this fusible iron-on vinyl over one of my wing templates, then pulling off the sticker backing to reveal the sticky side and taping it down so that it can't escape. Over that, I roll out some of this pretty iridescent cellophane, doing my best to trap 1,000 air bubbles between the two sheets. I accidentally got 1,001 air bubbles in this wing, so I used my brayer to bring it back down to an even 1,000. To give the wings a little bit of color at the edges, I'm using these alcohol inks in various shades of yellow and green. I start by dripping a few drops of this light limey color onto a foam stamper pad and just stamping it all over the edges of the wing. I actually go past the edges of my template so that I have some wiggle room to allow for any variations, aka mistakes, that I made when shaping the wire. And once I have pretty good coverage with that, I can start working this darker green color into the outer edges. I love how these alcohol inks flow and interact with each other. It's so watercolory and organic when you just kind of leave it to its own devices. Okay, side note, if you're following along making wings to try to get to the fairy realm too, just be sure to ventilate your space and wear proper PPE while you're working with this stuff. I think it actually looks pretty close to real fairy wing coloring, at least for the fairies I've seen.
And now I just have to repeat this 7 more times.
And I gotta say that this part of the process was heavily inspired by another craft tuber who I think has probably been named Queen of the Fairies at this point. Fancy fairy wings and things. So while I was waiting for some of these inks to dry, I was on the internet doing some research about my new home, the fairy realm, reading about how fairies love to pull tricks on people, and sometimes their idea of a trick is murder. And it really gave me pause for a minute when it hit me.
There's no internet in the fairy realm. How am I gonna get my Baldur's Gate 3 memes?
Uh-oh, I don't know if I can do this, folks. But now that all 8 wings have been painted and left to cure for 24 hours on every available flat surface that I have, I've regathered my resolve and it's time to put the wires on. I lay out the wing wires over their corresponding painted vinyl and cellophane pieces and try to finagle the wires out of their current, smushed in the trunk of my car state, and back into their flat, untouched by the horrors of modern technology origins. Then I stick down one edge of another sheet of this iron-on vinyl and slowly pull off the backing paper while I roll it onto the wing nice and smoothly. Okay, maybe not totally smoothly, it got a little wrinkly up here at the top of this wing, but if you see me in the fairy realm, just pretend you don't notice for me, okay? Then, to stick it all together, I'm heating up the vinyl with my hairdryer so it gets kind of soft and pliable and is able to stretch down over the wires to stick to the vinyl cellophane sheet underneath. The vinyl won't stick to the wires, only itself, so I like to take the edge of my finger and kind of help the vinyl along to stick as tightly as it can around those wing veins. Once I've gone over all the wire edges on one side, I flip the wing over to heat up the other side and press down the wire edges there too to ensure they're as tight as they can be. Then I can move on to the next wing, which surely won't get wrinkly. Okay, maybe they're a little wrinkly. I don't have any of this vinyl to spare, so I can't do it again and fix it, which is actually maybe setting me up for an interesting milestone on this channel. Is this gonna be my first video where I don't significantly redo any steps of the process? Oh no, I think I might have just jinxed it. These wings are looking a little square, so let's cut them out. To cut out the edges in a way that's going to help them stay firmly sealed together, I'm using a soldering iron. And so that I don't burn a hole through my table in the process, I'm putting my wing template beneath a piece of glass, my corresponding wing over the top of that, and then tracing the template out with a hot iron. I'm careful to leave some excess film around the edges of the wires because, like I mentioned in the previous step, the film doesn't really stick to wires, it just sticks to itself. So this will keep the wings from just unwrapping as I fly around the fairy realm. This was one of the most satisfying steps of the process because they just kind of suddenly turned from colorful eye-poking hazards to actual wings. There might be bubbles and wrinkles, whatever, I don't care anymore. They're shiny, they're pretty, I'm obsessed. While I cut the rest of these out, I want to take a moment to thank my patrons. Your support has seriously blown me away. I made my Patreon last month thinking that it would just be a good way to get $5 a month out of my dad, but then the rest of you joined too? Like, I can't even begin to express my gratitude for your support. I want to give a special thank you to my honorary Dingly Dellians, Nick Ananu, Straight Up Sephiroth, Asen, Cynthia Treen Studio Thread Follower, Robert Harris, Windamore Atelier, Ian Howell, Figgy Starship, Jake, and Brave Little Toaster. And this month's newest toothbrush donors, Stephen Roy, Art of Muna, Ele Fosca, Sabrina Waldman, Smo, La Pokema, Cowhearted Girl, Liesel Copeland, Hob the Troll, Naranhart, Ducky, The Mighty Bottle, Roason, Jonathan Brown, Sosin Q, Alligator Did It, Shannon Sweeney, Wasatch Creations, Sloan, John Bowdowain, Peripetia, Emma Grace, Sam Bannon, Sabina Omoba, Seriously Nerdy, Aaron Fector, Suzanne, Rowan McCall, Shark in Hats, Simply Phil, Glassworks, and Kim.
Thank you. Your support is the fairy dust that helps this channel take flight. Oh my god, that was so corny, but for real though, thank you so much.
The wings are all cut out, but for a final detail, I decided to make some little holes in the wings to give them kind of a lived-in look. I mean, it'd be embarrassing to show up in the fairy realm with brand new wings like a total poser. And honestly, I could just stop here, bundle them together, and they would be perfectly nice fairy wings.
But I'm not here for perfectly nice. I am here for 100% anatomical fairy accuracy.
So let's keep going, starting with giving these wings a little bit of shape. Because right now, they're a little flat, and I want these wings to have a bit more of a mid-flap look to them. Luckily, since their structure is made of bent wire, they're pretty bendable. I use the edge of my desk to get leverage and gradually bend the stem of the wing down to create a slight U shape, like it's catching a gust of air. The tips I bend over the desk in the opposite direction so that the overall wing makes a subtle S shape. This is kind of matching how wings look at some stages of motion when they're mid-flight, but it'll also help the wings be more appealing to look at from every angle, and make getting through doorways even more complicated. That leaves me with one big thing that I want to fix about these wings. It's this piece of cellophane that sticks up over the edge of the top wire.
I can't cut it off because then the wings would just fall apart. But with it, it just really messes with my whole 100% fairy accuracy kind of a thing. So, I have a plan.
And my plan is Worbla. I'm gonna form it over each of the top veins and use it to encapsulate the cellophane. Worbla is a thermoplastic that gets flexible and sticky once it's heated up with my hairdryer, so once I've literally turned this strip into molten plastic, I carefully match its edge with the lower edge of the top vein wire. This stuff sticks to nearly everything except for silicone and your fingers, so it sticks to the cellophane without even having to ask nicely. Once it's attached on the first side, I flip the wing over, then bend the Worbla down to stretch over the bottom edge of the wire on that side. Now that I have one little section done, I repeat this step for the rest of the wing, cutting the Worbla a little bigger each time as the wires get bulkier. Sometimes I don't cut the Worbla quite big enough and end up with gaps on the second side, but those are easy to patch with some smaller pieces of Worbla that can be blended in. In one of my less fairy accurate concessions on these wings, I rounded the tips as much as I could because I keep having nightmares about people running into me while I'm wearing these and poking their eyes out and me being banned from the fairy realm for life. So not only does this solve my excess cellophane issue, but I actually really like the aesthetic of this. It replicates the look of wings of a lot of fairy art I love, I mean actual fairies that I've seen in real life, and I feel like it grounds the wings in reality a bit more. Like it feels like these top veins are almost the anchors connecting the delicate wing film to my body and giving them the strength they would need to fly, and also giving them the actual strength they need to stay on my back. With all these individual wings finished, all that's left is to put them together. The first step is a bit of a guessing game, taping the wings together roughly in the places that I think they would go, then doing the very precise process of holding them up behind my back while trying to film at the same time to see if the placement looks right. Now to make these wings attachable to my body in a way that doesn't involve surgery, I'm going to connect the loose wires hanging down from the wings into a U-shape that I can shove into the back of my corset. Bending the stems out at a right angle actually gives me the leverage I need to bend these wings apart a little bit so that they're not just sitting on top of each other. Then I do the same on the other side to match. I trimmed the wires so that I could attach them in their U-shape, but of course I accidentally trimmed them too far. It's not a big deal, they'll actually be fine and perfectly stable while I'm wearing them, it just makes them a little wobbly when I'm holding them. Just, if you're planning to make wings to go to the fairy realm too, don't make my mistake. So now I can start attaching them all permanently with a technique I call just shove all the cracks full of hot Warbler. These things are massive and no longer fit on my desk or lay flat on any but one side, so this was very hard to film. But I mean, the concept is kind of self-explanatory. I'm just trying to get all the existing Warbler to stick together with more Warbler, and then make sure the Warbler extends at least a little bit below the point that the corset would cover it. The first pass at this is all connected and stable, but a little chunky looking, so a quick hit with the hairdryer softens it all up again so I can smooth it out. Finally, I do another pass of tape around the wire wing stems, and because I weirdly don't want scratchy aluminum rubbing up against my bare back for hours, I wrap the U-shape with scraps of fabric using hot glue. While doing this, I was watching a video essay on YouTube about how in the fairy realm, if you tell a fairy your name, they can control you forever and make you do their dark bidding, and it really shocked me.
When I realized that the fairy realm doesn't have YouTube.
How am I going to share more crafts and critters with you all and enjoy this sweet little community that we've been building?
I don't know if I can do this. Well, let's move on to the reveal because I need a minute to think this through. I can't do this. I can't leave you all behind. Also, I never figured out how to get shrunk down to 2 inches tall and gain magical powers, so... It was tough breaking the news to my partner, though.
Are you kidding me?
So I'm hanging up my wings. I can still wear them at the Ren Fair sometimes. I guess I'll just have to stay here and try to help make this mortal realm a better place instead.
I'll have your face.